Grace and peace, everybody. Welcome to Berean TV. I wanted to speak a little bit about the pyramids in Egypt and Jews or Hebrews or the Israelites. A question came up. I don't know, there's some misconception. A lot of people are under the impression that the Jews built, or Hebrew Israelites or Hebrews built pyramids in Egypt. Well, that's not so. That's not so. I think a lot of times people in Christendom, even Israelites or people in the church, they tend to confuse certain timelines within the scriptures. We see Abraham, even the most liberal scholar tell you Abraham was on the scene 1700 BCE, 1795, 1775. Scholars different a little bit on the exact time. But when Abraham came on the scene with his wife Sarah, which we see in the book of Genesis, the pyramids were, according to history, the pyramids were already standing for 500 years. And it's interesting because when I read the scriptures aren't lying. Nowhere in scripture say Jews built pyramids. Hebrew Israelites built pyramids. None of that stuff. It was already standing, and they were already established with a theology. They already had a religion of the afterlife in the Egyptian Book of the Dead that was already on the scene. A lot of people tend to read the Bible and they think that that has to do with the whole wide world. The book of Genesis 1 through the 11th chapter deals with the creation of man and the world. And if you notice, it only names about 4 or 5 women. So a lot of people, they're confused and they think that Genesis is talking about the entire planet. When you get to the 12th chapter of Genesis, then it picks up with a man named Abraham, who would later beget Isaac and Jacob would become what we know as Israel with his 12 sons. And that's where the 12 tribes of Israel would come from. They were birthed as a nation in Egypt. But when Abraham got to Egypt, Abraham never even declared the high God to the Pharaoh. It's interesting that Abraham turned around and told the Pharaoh, told the Pharaoh and them that my wife is my sister, and the Most High had to speak to the Pharaoh. Now, a lot of Christians and a lot of Israelites don't like to read that part of scripture. How did the Most High have knowledge of the high God of heaven? How did the Pharaoh have knowledge of the high God of heaven? Those are things we have to look at. But I think the timeline, even with the dating stuff, get confused with not even European scholars. A European bishop named Ussher in the 1700s, an Irish bishop named Ussher. I don't know where these you got to watch out for. We preachers in the church are crazy. Let's just call it for what it is. This bishop named Ussher, he just came up and said one day, 9:30 in the morning, 4004 BC, God created Adam and Eve. Now, when people attempted to question him on this date, he said that he counted all of the ages of everybody from Genesis in the beginning, and he came all the way through to the Bible, and he came up with that 6,000 years. And that's how come y'all hear a lot of people speak about 6,000 years. But you have to remember, the Bible don't speak about every single person, or only individuals that were extremely important to the story, to the development of the theological theme in the story. When we read the Bible, we have to remember the Bible is not a scientific book. The Bible is not a book of archaeology. The Bible's not all those things. A lot of people try to make the Bible something it's not. It speaks on that thing, and when it speaks on science, it's accurate, we believe, but it's not there for that purpose. It's not going to tell me how far Saturn is from the Earth, how fast the earth revolves around the sun. The Bible's not there for that. The Bible has to deal with redemption of mankind through the high God and a history of how man has fallen into the state that he is in, and how God is always called out by his grace and his mercy, called out people like Abraham, called out people like Noah and Enoch, and then later on he chose for himself one nation, which was the nation of Israel. They ran amok, they were crazy. And that's just the truth. That's just how it is. Another thing that comes up, that came up recently, somebody asked me about wisdom sayings. We have to understand what's in the Proverbs. We have those type of writings in Babylon. We have those type of writings in Egypt. Kings were concerned with wisdom. And the scripture says that wisdom is the principal thing. We need to desire her. The book of Proverbs speaks of wisdom like a woman that you need to desire and you can learn something from. So we have to understand that, and a lot of people would tend to think that when Solomon spoke the only wisdom on the planet. No, that's not so. Wisdom is from everybody. There's wisdom writings in Asia. There's wisdom writings in Egypt. The Fertile Crescent is full of wisdom writings. So we have to straighten those things out. Bishop Ussher took it upon himself, and he told us 4004 BC, 9:30 in the morning. How did he know that in the 16th century? It is amazing to us. But he did that, and being that the Catholic Church was the authority of at the time, and they were the ones pushing the doctrine at the time, that's what they forced upon the people. Later on, I'll get into the gap theory and how old we think the earth is, and carbon testing, and why we go and we don't go with that, and certain dates. But Hebrew Israelites, Jews, first of all, Jews weren't even around, so we can't even use the word Jew. That didn't come around till 1,000 years later. But Abraham, none of the Jews built any pyramids. When Abraham came to Egypt, they already had theology, and they already had a pyramid set up. I'll get into some other that stuff later on, but I just wanted to answer that question. If you like what you heard, subscribe. Thanks for watching.